And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Small craft advisories here along the south coast of the Panhandle. Southeast 25 knots, east 25 to 30 knots for the north coast, and southeast at 10 for Lynn Canal, 15 for Stevens Passage, Clarence Strait, south winds 20 knots. Wednesday, 30 to 35 knot winds here for the south coast, still out of the southeast. Small craft advisories here for the central and north coast for east to southeast winds 25 to 30 knots. Lynn Canal, Stevens Passage, southeast at 20 and southeast 30 knots for Clarence Strait. Prince William Sound and the eastern Gulf Coast tomorrow, east winds at 30 knots, 25 knot easterlies here for the western North Gulf Coast. Southeast 20 knots for the Barren Islands. Gale warnings for Kamishak Bay east at 35 there. Cook Inlet north to northeast 20 to 30 knots. Wednesday, Cook Inlet northeast 15 to 20 knots. Northeast at 25 for Kamishak Bay and the Barren Islands. And northeast 20 for the western North Gulf Coast. Small craft advisories there on the east side for east winds at 25 knots and 10-foot seas. Prince William Sound, though, east at 15. Kodiak Island, northeast in Shelikof Strait, southeast on the east side of Kodiak, and both areas at 20 knots. Alaska Peninsula, north to northwest winds, 20 to 30 knots, and northwest at 20 for Bristol Bay. And for the peninsula, the Yaak Pen here on Wednesday, east to northeast winds, 15 to 25 knots, northeast at 15 knots for Bristol Bay, and Kodiak east at 20 knots. For the eastern Aleutians, north to northeast to southeast winds at 20 to 25 knots, south at 30 knots for Adak and Atka, and for the western Aleutians, south to southeast winds 30 to 35 knots. And then for Wednesday, for the western Aleutians, north to west winds at 25 to 40 knots, west 30 to 40 knots for Adak and Atka, and southwest winds at 25 to 30 knots for the eastern Aleutians. Here for the Norton Sound area, northeast at 20 knots for Tuesday, north at 15 for St. Lawrence Island, Yukon Delta Coast north at 15, and 25 knots out of the north for the Kuskokwim Delta Coast. Variable winds at 10 knots for St. Matthew Island, east at 15 for the Pribilofs. And for Wednesday, east winds 30 knots for the Pribilofs, northeast at 25, St. Matthew Island, southwest coast here, St. Lawrence Island, northeast at 15, and northeast at 10 for Norton Sound. Eastern Beaufort Sea Coast tomorrow, not too bad wind-wise, northeast at 10 to 15 knots, about the same on the central coast. Picking up here to brisk wind advisories for the western Arctic coast for east to northeast winds 25 to 30 knots, northeast 15 for the Chukchi Sea. And then for Wednesday, we've got north to northeast winds of 15 knots here for the Chukchi Sea, and windier here for the Arctic coast, as you can see, east to northeast winds anywhere from 30 to 40 knots.